Right now on Law and Crime Special Report, Justice and Peace. Multiple anesthesiologists are questioning the amount of ketamine used on Elijah McClain before his death last August. McClain, who was 140 pounds, was injected with enough ketamine for a person who weighs 220 pounds.
All right. So we got 500 of ketamine?
Yep. Plus,
this shit in New York, this is not happening in my town.
Later, a Michigan couple has been charged with felonious assault after a viral video shows the two pulling a gun on a mother and her two daughters.
Get the license plate. Get the license plate now. Because you were never about to hit me with the damn car. About to hit me with the car? Oh, both of y'all put a gun down on me, okay?
Justice and Peace bringing you inside the movement for police reform. It's Wednesday, July 8th, 2020. Good afternoon, I'm your host, Brian Buckmire, here at Justice and Peace. Let's start off with our first story, that of Elijah McClain. Now, we've heard this story time and time again of how a young man who we believe to be going through some sort of an episode, it has not been confirmed as to whether or not he had any mental health issues, but you can kind of see that there are some alarming questions to be asked in that interaction, and that interaction with the police officers ultimately led up to his being in the hospital and then his death some days later. Now, as we start to examine, we're starting to realize that the amount of ketamine that was given to him was far beyond what should have been given to someone that size. Let's start off with some of the reports on that.
In this instance, I don't see what the necessity was for using such a potent agent, especially at that high of a dose.
Although McClain only weighed 140 pounds, first responders injected him with 500 milligrams of ketamine, enough for a 220-pound man. Aurora Fire Rescue personnel later said they overestimated McClain's weight.
For the sedation level, we're looking at 200 to 250 would be on the high end of what you would normally give him. So he got twice that in one shot.
All right, so I'm joined with criminal defense attorney Adam Konta and former Philadelphia prosecutor Bernarda Villalona. Bernarda, Adam, thank you for joining us. Bernarda, let's start off with you. When I heard these numbers, and I always worry, like, maybe people don't work with weight as much as we do as attorneys who have to think about pedigree information and things of the like. When I heard about the numbers, I'm thinking to myself, how do you look at a person that's 140 pounds, so like the size of Rihanna, basically, and say, you know what, that person's as big as LeBron James, and then administer medicine based on that? That one lost me.
Well, Brian, it is so disappointing that how negligent these first responders were. And aside from even administering double the dosage for Elijah McClain, at the point that they administered that, Elijah McClain was already on the ground. He was already quiet. He was compliant. He wasn't moving, and he had already been sitting or laying on his own vomit. There was no necessity to actually inject him with ketamine to begin with. But I see a lot of issues with this case, especially given that they did give him the double dosage.
Now, Adam, as we start to explore this, we're also speaking to anesthesiologists, and we're learning that typically, even in hospital settings, where you have a much more controlled environment than in the middle of the street where someone's being detained or arrested, you're supposed to have heart monitoring as well as monitoring their breathing through certain apparatuses. That was not given to Elijah when he was given double the dosage of ketamine. So you give him the wrong amount, you don't follow proper procedures, and he ends up dead. That, to me, sounds like criminal negligent homicide, at least by someone. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think this one's tricky because I think we're talking about two separate issues, right? First, this is someone who never should have been stopped in the first place. This is someone who never should have been arrested. All blame really should fall on those officers for everything that happened afterwards, because that just never should have occurred. And then you look at exactly like what we're talking about here, a situation of extreme negligence. We see in criminal trials all the time identifications being off by inches here and there, and we ask ourselves, how could this happen? Most of the time, it's because we think cops aren't necessarily telling the truth. But this isn't that situation. These are people trained to save lives, and you can't be off by that much. I'm 6'5". I weigh about 225 pounds. What they described is someone so much smaller, and everything that you just asked, it seems like just utter negligence and a lack of training. Because when you give someone ketamine like that, the first thing you have to look for is immediate respiratory issues. It seems like they could have jump-started his breathing and spontaneously he would have started breathing again if they had had the proper training. It's just an incredible tragedy that never should have occurred.
Now we're seeing an assortment of photos from Elijah McClain, and again, to give context, he's 5'6", 140 pounds. To Adam's point, I mean, I guess that's comparison to us. I'm of similar size to Adam. That's a twig. And for you to confuse 5'6", 140 pounds, like look at his arms. Like that's a tiny guy, but you're confusing him with someone the size of LeBron James? Bernarda, you're a former Philadelphia prosecutor. I get it. This is a situation where the officers didn't wake up and decide we're gonna murder someone. I get that, but that's murder one. This seems like a situation where mistake upon mistake upon mistake upon mistake led to someone's death. I would think that after a certain number of mistakes, we get into the realm of criminality. Why is that not happening here?
Well, the biggest issue is that the medical examiner, the coroner, hasn't been able to determine what's the cause of death because they're still saying that they can't determine whether he died as a result of a bad reaction to the ketamine or something else within his body. So in order to charge these officers or even the first responders for actually administering double the dosage of ketamine, they need to determine that it is a homicide, because if it's not a homicide, then it can't be classified or actually charged with any type of homicide charge, whether it's murder, manslaughter, or criminally negligent homicide.
Now, Adam, let's quickly just put it on the other foot because we're defense attorneys, so let's think about it this. The prosecutor says that they need enough information beyond a reasonable doubt to prosecute. I get that. I agree. That's the standard. And what Bernarda is saying is correct as well. But I'm thinking about this as a defense attorney. If I go up there on summation to argue on behalf of the police officers and say, you know what? It wasn't the officers pinning him to the ground. It wasn't the officers choking him. It wasn't double the dose of ketamine. It wasn't all the things the officers did that killed him. It was something else. I feel that as a defense attorney, I would get laughed out of the court because that would
I don't
be
think so.
doubt, but I don't think that's reasonable. What would
I really
be reasonable?
disagree. Especially, I think what's key here is a little detail that when he was given the ketamine, the first responder who gave it to him said, okay, 500 of ketamine. This wasn't an isolated decision. This was 4 people in the heat of the moment who collectively agreed that that was the correct amount or that that was appropriate, didn't catch it, and then again, didn't provide resuscitation and respiratory aid. But you know, we deal in this world of qualified immunity, and thank God it's changing now, where people, and the point of it is designed for first responders and police to be able to do their job and not be constantly worried about being sued. I think what happened here is exceptionally gross negligence. I think the result is because of poor policing and racist policing. But the first responders, I think, have a real case here. They came upon a situation where police are telling them that there's someone in a delirious state that is not cooperating, is a suspect of who knows what, and needs to be sedated. And they did, and they made a horrible, horrible mistake. To get to the level of a crime and to have a jury convict them of a crime, I think is going to be tricky, especially for the 3 that didn't administer the actual syringe. But because that first one announced it, it's sort of this diluted responsibility amongst them. So I think they would have a real tough time getting conviction on this case for the first responders. They'll get a civil judgment, but I don't know about criminal.
Gotcha. My statement would apply both to the officers and maybe to some degree the EMT, but I think the EMT can't just blindly say, okay, we're gonna follow your lead on this one in terms of how much ketamine. So I think that would be a difficult thing for them. Let's switch gears just a little and talk about a different story, that being the vandalizing of a Black Lives Matter mural. Now, we've seen them pop up all over the country where people are taking out the ability to, they go to their city and they say, hey, we want to paint this mural, and the city agrees, and they do so. It's happened here in Brooklyn. It's happened in other cities as well. However, a couple took to the mural and decided to paint over it in black and videotape the actions and were videotaped themselves saying, hey, all lives matter. We don't believe in this. Let this leave to New York. Let's take a look at that video. So let's start off with you, Adam. This is a low-level charge. They're only being charged with misdemeanor crimes, similar to that of New York, where they can only be punished by up to a year in jail. But I would assume, and I think rightfully so, that they would not face any jail time on this, as low-level misdemeanors are treated through most of the country. But let's dive into this. What do you make of them painting over the Black Lives Matters? And I think we have to kind of also talk about the elephant in the room, because there's also people pulling down statues. And so I think people are going to be juxtaposing or comparing the two. So what are your thoughts?
Well, two thoughts. On the last part you said, they're charged with a hate crime here, which I'm not saying is inappropriate. And I think they should be charged with those misdemeanors. But we also do have to then be fair to people that we agree with, right? We agree that Confederate statues should come down, but the people vandalizing those should face the same charges while they're still standing. So I want to say that I think both of those things need to be fairly implemented. But this in particular, I think, is an interesting case because of where it happened. It happened in California, one county away from Berkeley and San Francisco. This is how quickly this divide happens. In their county in California, again, right next to San Francisco and Berkeley, their county is 78% white and only 0.7, less than 1% black. So these are people who grew up thinking that cops are just friendly neighborhood good guys who occasionally give out speeding tickets. These are the hardest people to reach, because they don't think this is a problem for them, even though they're so close to a major metropolitan area. You heard her. She said, take this back to New York. This is a New York problem, even though she lives that close to where a lot of this is happening. It's disheartening. It's disheartening that we have such different views when we live so closely together. But these are people who need to be reached, and they need to be punished. And I hope other people see this, because this is not a New York problem. This is not a San Francisco problem. And if you're in New York like I am, or if you're in one of those liberal places and you see so clearly that we're on the right side of history here, just know that it's not in the middle of America where these type of opinions are happening. This is a good example. This is one county away. Just like in New York City, you go up to Sullivan County, Orange County, you get people like this a lot more than you think.
Bernarda, same. Sorry, we're gonna take a quick break. We're gonna come back. We've got other stories we want to talk about. We'll be back at Justice and Peace after this break. All right, so let's move on to Michigan, where a couple is being charged with felonious assault for pulling out their gun on a mother and two daughters outside of a Chipotle inside of the parking lot. Let's look at how that interaction went down.
She got the gun on me.
Get away.
She got the gun on me. He about to hit me with the car. Call him. I'm telling. Get the license plate. Get the license plate. Get the license plate now. Because you were never about to hit me with the damn car. You about to hit me with the car?
You fucking
both of y'all put the guns down on me, okay? Call Richard back up to the police. Call Richard back up here now.
I got it. Don't you fucking jump behind
No, I ain't jumping behind your car. I was walking. Your husband was hitting me.
Get the fuck back!
Do you see that? Do you see that? They both pointed that gun on me. He was trying to hit me with the car when I was going back. You see that? And then when I hit his car, he wanted to jump out the car and put a gun on me. That is crazy. Trump making it real comfortable. Call the police. No, don't go anywhere. Call the police. 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 You about to hit me with the car.
So Bernarda, let's start off with you. I know that oftentimes when we are dissecting these cases, it's police officers, and I know as a public defender, I'm a little jaded and biased, but oftentimes I hear officers use the same speech. I'm fearful, back up, stop doing this. But their actions and their words don't seem to coincide, especially when you look at some of what's going on. In this video, it seems like this individual who's not an officer is employing similar tactics of saying, I'm fearful, you back up. But at least from the video that we're seeing, and I admit we do not see everything, it doesn't look like this woman should be fearful. So what's going on when she's the only one with a gun? and this person's speaking, even if yelling at her?
What's going on, Brian, is that this woman thinks, of course, because these the mom and the daughter are Black, that in her mind is a threat. That's what the threat is here. That is what the dangerous element is here for this woman, that needed for her to take out a firearm and point that at someone who doesn't have a weapon, who is not a threat, who is not coming to you with any type of wanting to inflict any kind of physical harm to you, but yet you think that you need to pull out a deadly weapon, a weapon that's capable of causing death to two young women because you said you're scared? Scared of what? They're unarmed. They're just talking to you. They're not doing anything to you. And that's the exact kind of behavior is why we have these killings all around the country.
Now, Adam, maybe I've been in New York for too long, and I think pre-COVID, you could take a subway ride and you could see 10 people yelling at each other and arguing and stuff like that, but no one pulls out a gun. No one in New York, we just sometimes interact with each other in that way, whether it be good, bad, or whatever it is. Now we're seeing this mindset, culture, ideology, whatever you want to call it, of if I think I'm being attacked, even verbally, I can pull out a gun or get very physical or agitated in someone's face. What is this? This doesn't seem to make any sense legally or even factually.
Yeah, I don't know. This one strikes me a little bit different. I have to disagree with you both a little bit on this one. The clip you showed supports everything you guys are saying, but the full clip, the 3-minute clip, I think this is a different situation. Now, I say that thinking that every gun should be melted. I don't think anyone should own a gun. But you live in that area of the country in suburban Detroit where a lot of people have legal concealed carry permits, which she did. And the full clip, I think, gives more context to it. I think this is a woman who's pregnant. I think she was genuinely fearful for her safety. The two women who ended up getting a gun pointed at them undeservedly, they were trying to agitate the two of them. They were trying to stop them from leaving. They were yelling at them. They were calling them racist, all really over what seemed to be bumping into them and not getting the apology that they wanted. And the woman did go behind her van and stop her from leaving. I believe that she probably was genuinely scared. She also got out of the car and kept her finger not on the trigger, but on the side of the gun. These two are now charged with felonies, face up to 4 years in jail. The husband lost his job already. I didn't really see the husband do much except try to get in the car and drive her out of there after the woman who had a gun pointed at her said, "What are you going to do? Are you going to hit me? I dare you. You're on video." I don't like this one. I don't think it's the same thing. I think it's insane that they pulled out a gun, but I do not feel the same way about this one.
Gotcha. Let's listen to the 911 call and how this woman reported the incident that we're seeing, where Adam is correct. It appears to be a fender bender or a discussion or an argument between it. And let's see what the woman said in the 911 call.
Unlike the internet, we have to gather all the facts and not have just snippets. So this is what's been gathered so far. First thing is a call. We'll go over is the calls that came into our 911 center and the timeline. So this is the very first call that came in, and I'm going to play this in totality for all of you so that you have all of the information that we have.
I feel threatened. I'm leaving this area right now.
I know you don't know where you're at. I need you to tell me where you're at. But where are you at?
We don't know. We don't know. Well, we don't know.
A woman just jumped behind our car. Hold on. I need you to stop because I need you to get your location first.
We're trying to get away from an area that we feel threatened in.
Okay, where are you going? The deputy.
We pulled around, but we're getting away from them. If they come over here, we're going to leave.
Safe location and tell me where you're going.
We don't know where it's
Sterling Williams and a Potbelly's and the Chipotle.
She's coming back here.
Oh my God, are you following us? Stay in your vehicle, lock the door.
So Adam, she does say that she feels threatened, and I get what you're saying, but I want to come back to you because you're parsing that should not have pulled out the gun, but this is a verbal altercation between 2 or 3 people. I do agree also. I didn't know that the husband lost his job. That seems ludicrous to me based on his involvement. My question would be then, what is she feeling threatened? And when you say threatened for what? Punch in the face, shot and killed? Because my understanding of pulling out a gun is you have to feel threatened that your life is in jeopardy, not that you're threatened of being yelled at, spat on, or slapped.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, you don't think you could defend this woman? You don't think that you could say she's pregnant, she was trying to leave, she was being yelled at, and then she was being forced into an area where she could not leave because the woman was blocking her car. She doesn't know these people. They're screaming at her. They're calling her names. She doesn't know if a violent altercation is about to break out at any moment. Let
me answer the question because we only have 30 seconds. I'm sorry I can't get to you, Bernarda. You're talking about the potential for harm to occur. You're saying that it could happen if this happened. That could have happened. That's not how use of force applies. She has to believe that it's intimate and that's going to actually harm her, not just a belief. Otherwise, we'd all pull out guns. But we're going to continue more with Bob Bianchi after this and keeping the peace. I'm Brian Buckmire. I'll see you tomorrow.